Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about the 3 biggest mistakes for stretching. Number 1, and the most common I definitely see, is going too aggressively. People, if they're stretching on their own, they think that it has to be a workout basically. You got to be grimacing and it's got to be strenuous and stressful and painful, because if it's not painful, you're not doing anything. If you're not pushing yourself past the limits, then, what's the point? And I can tell you vehemently and with full confidence that is the exact opposite that you need to be doing. Because if you're stretching to the point of pain, where you're like gritting your teeth and it just feels miserable, you've got to remember you're not stretching a piece of silly putty. So it's not like if you pull it harder it will lengthen. You're stretching tissue that's connected to a nervous system and lots of different kinds of tissue: muscles, tendons, ligaments, nerves. Your nervous system is controlling all of this, and your nervous system doesn't like to be stretched too aggressively. What will happen, say if you're stretching your hamstrings and it's very painful, but you just keep pushing, eventually your nervous system will say, okay, I will give you some extra range of motion, I'll let you go a little further, but I'm going to remember that when you get into this position, it's dangerous because it causes pain, so I don't want you to have that extra range of motion for very long. I'm going to take it back, and actually I'm probably going to make you feel tighter, because your nervous system, your brain is going to perceive that movement as a threat. So I know that's kind of like nerdy. I wish I could go more in depth without, people's eyes glazing over, but just know that if you're stretching to the point of pain, it is exactly opposite of how your body operates, and it's probably the biggest reason why most people don't get much benefit, at least long term, when they're stretching. They feel good temporarily, even that kind of like pleasure pain cusp, but I can promise you, you'll always feel tight because you're continuously telling your brain that this is a dangerous position to be in. Kind of coupled with that is not breathing and not synchronizing your breathing to the stretching. So again, if you're stretching very aggressively, you're probably holding your breath, because we tend to hold our breath when things are stressful. That's just an automatic reflex. But if you're holding your breath, again, you're sending the exact opposite signal to your brain than what you're trying to do. Because when you're trying to stretch, what are you trying to do? You're trying to get things to relax and lengthen and open up, right? But if you hold your breath, you're creating muscular tension. You hold your breath because you're about to take a punch. You want to brace. But if you're trying to stretch and you get things to relax, then holding your breath obviously does the exact opposite. So you have to remember to breathe. I tell people to inhale slowly through your nose, exhale slowly from your mouth, especially exhale as you move into a stretch position. This is how our bodies prefer to operate. When you inhale and exhale slowly like that, you're relaxing and releasing global muscle tension, because you're sending a signal to your muscles and to your body like, okay, everything's cool, everything's relaxed, so I don't need to hold on to extra tension. It's the exact opposite of a stressful, high tension state. And so if you're stretching, obviously it makes sense. So breathe in with your nose, out with your mouth. The other big mistake, and this sounds really counterintuitive, but go with me here, stretching things that feel tight. Now, a lot of times we feel tightness, or we have a sensation of tightness in our muscles that are actually in a chronically overstretched state. So take, for instance, our upper back or our upper traps, the back of our neck. A lot of times when we're like this, we're sitting with our hands in front of us, we're working on a computer for 8 hours a day, all this stuff starts to feel really tight. So people think, oh, it's tight feeling, I need to stretch it more, because if it's tight, it must be short. It's actually the exact opposite. These muscles have been in a chronically stretched position for a long time. So that tension, that tightness feeling, is actually a sensation of being overstretched. So those muscles are like, please bring us back closer together. So it's kind of confusing, but the science of stretching is not as simple as people think. That's the other thing, is people think stretching is super easy and it's pretty mindless and you can't mess it up. But again, it's very complicated. It takes a lot of training, a lot of education to really understand it. But only stretching muscles that feel tight, you're probably stretching, well, I won't say probably, but you very likely are stretching muscles that are already over lengthened. So stretching them more, again, may feel kind of good temporarily, but you're creating worse long-term effects. So often the muscles that we need to stretch, that we need to open up, don't feel tight because they're already in a shortened, compacted state. So they're not sending off that sensation. So really, these are usually the muscles on the front side of our body, our upper chest and shoulders, muscles along the side of our hips, very rarely get stretched. And I won't go too deep into this because I could talk for 5 hours on this. Yep. Speaking of talking, Sam and Didi. But the muscles, we have to treat our left and right sides as two separate beings almost. We're often looser on one side of our body and tighter on the other side. So when you're stretching your own, pay attention to that. Stretch your sides, left arm, left leg, right arm separately. And pay attention to which one actually feels tighter when you're stretching it versus which one feels tight maybe in normal daily life. So that's all I got for this one. I'm going to cut it out before Didi and Sam go crazy. I'll see you in the next one.